Kevin Rudd dismantled the Pacific solution during his first prime ministerial term and abolished temporary protection visas.
And today there was another tragedy. A boat capsized just north of Christmas Island.
Boatloads of asylum seekers are swamping the government's rebooted Pacific solution, arriving at more than double the rate of last year.
Yesterday there was another tragedy at sea.
It is of concern. That's why we need to implement all of the recommendations of the Houston panel.
7:30 understands intelligence shows hundreds more people are in transit to Australia.
Overnight, for the second time in days, asylum seekers drowned as their boat capsized in rough seas.
But first, another asylum seeker drama is unfolding off the Australian coast.
Another asylum seeker boat is missing off the Cocos Islands.
It's becoming an almost daily event.
The boat sank off Christmas Island, killing an estimated 55 people on board.
And there's been a steady flow of Iranians that are being assessed as economic, not political refugees.
A certain proportion of people who come to this country are not bona fide refugees.
Today marked the 50,000th arrival by boat since you changed the Howard government's border protection policy.
How do you get the balance right?
The difference was the change in the domestic policy.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm glad to see you, and I feel sorry for you for what happened to the Labor Party. They're really shit.
Yet the government won't embrace temporary protection visas or boat turnarounds.
Mr Abbott says, turn the boats back. He says that's his policy. Let me add 3 more words. Mr Abbott, how will you turn the boats back?
Just click your fingers and say, as Mr Abbott does, a 3-word slogan will fix everything. This policy is a cavalier approach to the welfare of our defence and border protection people, and it is cavalier in regard to the safety of the asylum seekers, and it will not work.
You safely turn around boats without Indonesia's cooperation?
Yes, we can.
You're not going to turn boats around.
Well, I think it's plain that the government's tow back the boats policy is in tatters.
The Immigration Minister today signed the document that will allow asylum seekers to be sent into detention on the Pacific island of Nauru. The announcement wasn't so smooth.
I'll get that. Security's been improved, I couldn't get in.
You've got people smugglers who earn more than $1 million a boat.
More than 4,000 asylum seekers have arrived since offshore processing was rebooted on August 13.
Now, I wanted to make the point very clearly today that anybody who arrives by boat from this moment onwards runs the risk of being processed somewhere else. Because
in fact, 87 people have arrived by boat this afternoon.
Well, that was before this announcement. That was at 1 o'clock.
So they're not included in that?
No.
It's accurate to say, isn't it, that the asylum seeker policy that you announced in August has not yet acted as any sort of deterrent to people trying to come to Australia via boat?
Well, I think there's a few challenges here, Lee, and
a few challenges. Come on. Despite multiple policy changes by 2 Labor governments over the last 5 years, the asylum seeker boats continue to come in record numbers. The reality is, you've announced some things, so you'd expect to see some progress, but everything is trending in the wrong direction. The numbers continue to go up, not down.
You cannot expect Howard government outcomes without the full suite of Howard government policy.
Because Nauru and Manus are basically already full because of the number of arrivals you've had coming to Australia, the effectiveness of those options as a deterrent is already over.
No, I don't necessarily accept that full premise.
And today the dam wall broke. The government will now begin processing their claims for refugee status in Australia and then release them into the community.
Well, how is it still a deterrent if they're already full and people know they are coming to Australia?
I'll be making it clear that we will continue to transfer people to Nauru and Manus Island. Very soon we'll have our first transfer to Manus Island.
4,000 plus people, because that's how many people are in limbo now in Australia. 7:30 understands that 2,000 asylum seekers will now be released into the community. With the people who are currently in Australia in limbo who've come in after August, you are going to have to start processing some of them in Australia, aren't you?
Well, I'll be making, obviously, further updates and further announcements about how we're managing that.
7:30 understands that more than 2,000 asylum seekers will be released into the community and unable to get a job, something that will put enormous strain on non-government and perhaps even state-based services.
In the 5 years that Labor's been in power, so far close to 26,000 people have arrived by boat. In the entire 11 years of the Howard government, only 14,000 or so people arrived. Is it logical then to say that the old raft of policies were more effective at stopping the boats than the current raft of policies are?
As I say, we're introducing Nauru and Manus Island. In relation to the other 2 policies, turn back the boats, we've talked about that, how unworkable that is.
What we've indicated is that the conditions for turning the boats back
do not exist right now.
Different people took different positions, and that was the issue of turnbacks. For me, that was something that I couldn't support.
I'm very distressed that we're likely to end up with a solution of onshore processing, which I support.
I couldn't ask someone else to do something that I couldn't see myself doing.
I believe Australia is big enough, culturally, economically, socially, geographically, to be able to efficiently process these applications and to welcome these people into our country.
I myself couldn't turn that around.